Thank you very much for coming in and for joining us on behalf of AMPU. On behalf of myself, it's a great honor to actually interview you. And, thinking about this interview, I was thinking, now you have actually, it's 10 years that you're doing research on tobacco harm reduction. So how many fields, I know it's something that you've already been asked, how many fields did you actually have to specialize in? And why did you actually start exploring vaping, in such a huge, wide field?
It's still not 10 years. I think at the end of the year is going to be the mark for the 10 years of research on electronic cigarettes. I started in late 2011, and 2012 was the time where I conducted my first study. When I started working on e-cigarettes, I knew nothing about e-cigarettes. I just knew that they exist, that's a new product, that you inhale something. I had no idea what you are inhaling, how you're doing it, what does it do, how does it work. And the motivation came from friends, from two very close friends, who sent me on one day a photo of themselves vaping, using an e-cigarette. And my immediate reaction was that you just wasted your money for something which is useless. And if you really want to quit smoking, because both of them were smokers, if you really want to quit smoking, you have to ask me and I will prescribe you some varenicline, the smoking cessation medication, the oral, the tablets. I think it's called Sampix or Santix, depends on the country. And you will quit. So they just reacted to my original reaction by sending me more and more photos of themselves. And that's what triggered me into doing some research and trying to find out more about this. So I looked online. I found a forum of e-cigarette users in Greece. And that's how I contacted them first through this forum to ask them to come to the hospital and to perform some studies and do some discussions, and so that I will understand better what's the e-cigarette, basically. And I've learned quite a lot from them, and I'm grateful to them because they basically taught me what the e-cigarette is. They were bringing their own devices. They also participated into our study, and that's how it started. Before completing the first study, I submitted an abstract to the European Society of Cardiology annual conference in 2012. I think it was held in Munich, in Germany. And, I wasn't expecting much because it was a very small sample size. We hadn't completed the study yet. But interestingly enough, not only did they accept the abstract, but they also asked us to do a press conference for the results, because it was the first study, looking at cardiovascular markers before and after using an electronic cigarette and comparing it with a tobacco cigarette, because we also had a group of smokers who were smoking. And that's how it started. And that's when I realized that seems to be a very interesting field. The product seems to be very interesting. And that's how it all happened. So my two friends are now smoke-free. One of them has been smoke-free for many years with electronic cigarettes. I think it must be more than 7 years. The other one quit 1.5 years ago with IQOS, however, not with an electronic cigarette, because he tried with an electronic cigarette repeatedly, using different devices. He never was able to find something to fit his own needs and his own preferences. So I offered him an IQOS. Initially he thought it was horrible. He couldn't even take a puff. He thought that it smells awful. But over time he got used to it, and now he's smoke-free for, I think, 1.5 years with IQOS. It doesn't matter. That's a tobacco harm reduction product, and you can't expect everyone to quit with one product only. There is no one miracle product. So the more options we have, the better, as long as the smokers are well informed and they make informed decisions based on real unbiased data.
So doing research on this subject, so many fields that you have to be specialized in, because it's thermodynamics, it's knowing probably 10 years ago or 9 years ago, so many instruments were not even available at the time. So how did you actually overcome that? Because it's so wide, you can't actually, aldehydes or things like that. I mean, you have to have specialized instruments and doing the correct studies.
Yeah. The product, there are many fields of research. You're starting by looking at the product itself and understanding the safety and risk profile of the product. And then you also need to look at the effects on humans. You need to look at population patterns, at behavioral changes related to the use of this product. So there's a vast array of different research fields that you need to work to work in. I mean, even on a population level, doing surveys and understanding how the population is perceiving and how the population is using these products. So it's a vast field. I was lucky enough to find a lot of scientists who work in different fields and create such research groups and teams with the equipment necessary to perform studies like that. So we have created a multimodality team with many experts in different fields, and we are working in different areas of research, covering basically everything in relation to e-cigarettes, both in terms of the product characteristics, but also the patterns of use by the population.
Nicotine. Yeah, I know you talk a lot about nicotine. So we know that combusted nicotine is addictive. So what do we know about vape nicotine or nicotine as a medical treatment? What are your findings on that? Are there any studies on nicotine on this way of actually absorption?
Well, I think that what matters and what plays a big role is the way that you obtain nicotine. So with nicotine replacement therapies, that you obtain nicotine over a long period of time, over several hours, and you have stable plasma levels of nicotine. There are no ups and downs. There are no big changes. I think this makes nicotine substantially less addictive, less dependent. But when you are, and I think that what matters most with smoking is that the ups and downs in nicotine intake, and that's what creates basically the dependence. And it's not only nicotine, but there are many other compounds in tobacco cigarettes that potentiate the dependence potential, the dependence effect of nicotine. So I think it's not one answer, to discuss about the dependence on nicotine. But we know very well that nicotine replacement therapies, where you take a patch and you have basically almost stable levels, the same plasma levels throughout the day with very low absorption speed, then you don't see people becoming addicted to these products. So it's not just nicotine as a chemical, it's the way you take it. And we know from smoking that you obtain nicotine and you increase your levels very, very rapidly, especially arterial levels within seconds. And the inhalation route is also very important, because when you inhale something and you absorb it through the lungs, it goes directly to the arterial circulation. So it increases the levels very, very rapidly. And the lungs are a very effective organ for absorbing compounds. So I think that inhaling nicotine, especially creating all these ups and downs, tips and dips, let's call it, is what plays a big role in independence. That's why Fagerström changed his test of nicotine dependence. He changed the name and renamed it as a Fagerström test of cigarette dependence, addressing also the behavioral aspect. Another aspect that I already mentioned is that smoking and tobacco cigarette smoke contains many other compounds that potentiate the dependence effect of nicotine. And these things usually are absent in e-cigarettes because in e-cigarettes producers use pharmaceutical grade nicotine, which doesn't have all these impurities, like monoamine oxidase inhibitors. Still, I think that the habit of inhalation will have some dependence potential, even in the form of an e-cigarette. So we need to be cautious, and we always need to inform non-smoking individuals about the dependence potential of e-cigarettes. But the issue of dependence is completely irrelevant for a smoker, because a smoker is already dependent on smoking. So I see it as an irony to try to discourage smokers from using e-cigarettes because of the dependence potential of e-cigarettes, or because of perpetuating the dependence on nicotine, because this is nonsense. You're talking to people who are unable to quit smoking. It makes no sense to discuss about this dependence and not discuss about the harms. You need to set priorities. The priority is to reduce harm. Health harm is not caused by inhaling nicotine. It is not caused by being dependent on nicotine. It's caused by being dependent on smoking, by using nicotine in the form of combustion, of a combustion product. That's what we need to stop immediately, as early as possible. It's more of a moral, ethical issue, which I don't think there is any immoral or unethical aspect in someone using nicotine. Nicotine is a chemical which is, socially compatible. Even if we call it independence, it's a socially compatible dependence, because you can use nicotine and perform your daily activities normally. It's not like opiates, which destroy the personal, social, and professional life of users. It's something very different. So in that respect, we need to focus on the problem. And the problem from a health perspective is smoking. It's the inhalation of combustion products and combustion chemicals. It's not nicotine per se. Nicotine participates minimally to the harm caused by smoking. So we need to set priorities. Otherwise, we are misinforming smokers. That's simple. Of course, every smoker should quit by him or herself if they can do that. But we know that most cannot succeed. And there is no point in delaying over time the quitting smoking just because we want them to quit with the best possible method. We need to accelerate smoking cessation. And if we don't succeed when a smoker tries by him or herself, if we don't succeed with medications, there is no point in repeating unsuccessful methods. We need to move forward. We need to provide an additional alternative. And that's the role of these products. It's a third line product, a third line option for a smoker who cannot quit by him or herself or with the use of approved methods. That's the role of this product.
Talking about nicotine, and I would like to know, what are your thoughts about nicotine salts and free-base nicotine?
Well, we know that free-base nicotine is one of the reasons for the throat irritation, the harshness that many people feel. And in some cases, you have smokers who need a lot of nicotine in order to reduce their smoking cravings, but they develop a lot of harshness in the throat. Throat heat. It gets too much, and it's not pleasant. And in that case, they are trying to reduce their nicotine concentration, but by doing that, they're not obtaining the amount of nicotine they want and they need. So this is a problem. And this is what is being addressed with salts. With salts, you are able to increase your nicotine intake without having this overwhelming throat heat, this harshness, this irritation. And that's the role of nicotine salts, I think. And by helping people, by helping smokers get more nicotine with less throat heat, you are able to first reduce even more their smoking cravings, and secondly, reduce also their risk from e-cigarettes, even if it's smaller, because we know that the amount of toxin exposure depends on the amount of liquid that you consume per day. So when you're using liquids with high concentration of nicotine, then you're going to consume less liquid per day. So you are reducing your exposure to toxins. It doesn't matter if it's very low. Still, it's linearly dependent on the amount of liquid. So the less liquid you consume, the lower is your exposure to that small amount of toxins. So it has a dual goal. First, satisfy the nicotine needs of smokers. Second, reduce the exposure to toxins.
Even with the European 20 milligram cap?
That was a big problem with the European Union, and that was a problem that still exists today. They shouldn't have set such a low limit, because we know that today many smokers are unable to quit with e-cigarettes simply because they need more nicotine and they can't get it from any cigarette. They need to consume a lot of liquid.
You knew that we had to talk about COVID-19. You knew that. But I'm saying this because I know you did a study on this. So what are your findings? What are your observations?
Yes, we have published a lot, I think 7 or 8 or 9 studies till now. It's not about e-cigarettes. It's not about heated tobacco products. It's not about smoking too. But it's about a hypothesis that we have built, saying that the virus may be attacking the nicotinic cholinergic receptor, so the cholinergic system. And we know that there is a system called cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway. This is an anti-inflammatory system in the human body which controls the immune response. We know very well that COVID is basically a hyper-inflammatory response. The immune system overreacts to the virus. The immune system cannot return to homeostasis, return back to normal levels of reactivity. So what it does is basically our own immune system and our own reaction attacks the lungs in the human body. And that's what is happening. The hypothesis that we have developed through our observations with smokers and through also some studies that we have done with molecular modeling with computerized models, basically looking at the structure, the three-dimensional form of the molecules, is that the virus may be interacting with these receptors which are available everywhere. The alpha-7 nicotinic cholinergic receptors are available in all our immune cells, in our body system everywhere, in the lungs, in the blood vessel wall. I mean, it's everywhere. So if the virus interacts with these receptors, then it can dysregulate the immune system. And that is the hypothesis we are building. And based on that, we have been proposing specific medications that act as alpha-7 cholinergic agonists. And one of these is nicotine through a pharmaceutical product, of course. But there are others too. We have a study where we are proposing, I think, 6 or 7 different pharmaceuticals that could be used, as a treatment for COVID-19. It's still a hypothesis which is under investigation. We don't have any final results yet. There is no clinical indication right now, but we are still working on that.
Talking about airborne, viruses, there is a study about propylene glycol in the 1940s. I think it was Dr. Robertson, if I remember correctly. Propylene glycol that actually kills airborne viruses. Is that truth, myth? Can it actually help against flus or related illnesses?
Yeah, there are several studies in the 30s and the 40s discussing about the virostatic properties of propylene glycol. It means that it prevents the virus from spreading. They have tried to use it as basically as an antiseptic for room air, using propylene glycol aerosol, vapors of propylene glycol, basically. They weren't successful. But the virostatic properties were shown at that time. That doesn't mean that it works on COVID, on SARS-CoV-2. That doesn't mean that inhaling it through any cigarette could have local antiseptic effects. We don't know, so we cannot suggest based on these studies that people should be inhaling propylene glycol because it might have some beneficial effects. It's a speculation. Let's not, be over optimistic. We don't have any data on that. So, but the fact that propylene glycol has such properties is something that has been shown in several studies in the 30s and the 40s. But that's it. We have no idea what's happening with this virus.
You're an expert on cardiovascular systems. What about hypertensions, obstructions, or things like that related to the cardiovascular system due to vaping or electronic vaporizers, I'd rather call rather than cigarettes? I think the term is not correct.
Yeah, but I think that we are starting to see studies where it has been shown that switching from smoking to electronic cigarettes results in clinical and biomarker improvement in cardiovascular health. One of the landmark studies was a study by George and colleagues from the UK. It was published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, where they showed that quitting smoking improves vascular function even 1 month, as early as 1 month after making the switch. And such improvements were also observed even in those who did not quit smoking completely, but reduced substantially their smoking consumption. So we are seeing the benefits. Also, there was no difference in the benefit between those who were using nicotine and those who were using non-nicotine liquids. So it's not a nicotine-dependent effect. And this is exactly what we were expecting. We're just seeing it now. So yes, if someone is making a switch from smoking to e-cigarette use, we expect, as we've said for many years now, we expect health improvements. And that's exactly what we're seeing.
It's one of the things I wanted to talk about is the European Cancer Plan. Apparently, I'm not sure, but from what I've heard, they're trying to sneak in a flavor ban. So we know that flavors that we use today are not the flavors that we used to have 10 years ago that came from the food industry. The flavors are dedicated flavors. They've got no DAAP for it and quite a few other things that we know at today that can be harmful. So, but banning flavors from your experience, would it actually in any way help tobacco harm reduction or even cancer plan? Banning flavors from the vaporizers.
Well, obviously, it's going to make the products less attractive for smokers. It's going to reduce the ability of the product to help people quit smoking, and it's going to create a huge black uncontrolled market, not only because of illegal flavor products, but also because everyone could get food flavors and use in e-cigarettes. But if you're not doing it correctly and you're starting a do-it-yourself basically market, it's going to be uncontrolled. You're not going to have the final product available to be tested or anything. Everyone will do whatever they want. And food flavors are also sold dissolved in oils, and you shouldn't inhale flavors which are dissolved in oil, because for food products it's fine to sell flavors dissolved in vegetable oil, but they shouldn't be inhaled. So it is going to cause harm to already established vapers. It is going to cause harm to smokers who would have quit smoking had flavored products being available. It's really decisions which have no scientific basis. They have not been adequately researched, and they will cause a lot more harm than any good.
Correct. Yeah, and I think so as well. Absolutely. The next question I wanted to talk to you about is something that is a bit dodgy. I know I I actually submitted some studies for the new, about the public consultation for the TPD3 in Europe. I saw what the Health Committee studies actually submitted to European Union. And one of the things that puzzled me was, I take it as an example, there was Dr. Busting's study about second-hand exposure. So they actually did a warning on second-hand exposure, but they decided that, that study was not, relevant, but they even left it in the reference note. So they actually chose to completely ignore it. So why do an health committee and politicians actually ignore studies that are important, like yours, like Dr. Busting's, like so many others? So why do they do that? I mean, I don't want to go political, but unfortunately, that is something left in the reference note. So it's something puzzled me. I mean, you're saying you are giving a warning on one side, and you've got a study that says, it's not true. So
basically, they cannot ignore science, especially science which has been published in the scientific literature. Cherry picking is something that the authorities, both the EU and the WHO, are excellent in. They are excellent in cherry picking. And they are excellent in ad hominem attacks too. Well, it's up to us that they don't get away with it. We need to apply more pressure, and we need to make them understand that it's irresponsible to apply cherry picking and make decisions which are supposed to be presented as scientific decisions, scientifically based decisions, while in fact they are based on cherry picking and on censorship, because that's what they're doing. And that's what people and organizations like the Bloomberg Foundation are doing. They are trying to apply censorship by ad hominem attacks, by defamation, by lies which are presented in journals, by hiring journalists to act like character assassins. It's completely ridiculous. They will not get away with that. We will continue our research, and we are going to present all our studies anywhere we can, and in the scientific domain, which is extremely important, of course. And that's what we will continue to do.
You're right, because we, on one way, by the way, you go, please, everybody that's actually looking at us, go to e-cigarette research, Dr. Faslinos, you can find the links, the researches, so please do go to e-cigaretteresearch.org, so you got the datas correct. And talking about correct datas is something that I saw a study, and actually I think it is in your blog, about, was it something from USA? They actually published a counter study.
Well, basically, there are a lot of bad research being published about e-cigarettes. We have basically published a lot of studies which are replications of previous research, and we have challenged the results. We also welcome anyone who wants to challenge our own findings to go ahead and challenge them. The funny thing is that they are accusing us for whatever you can imagine, but they have never accused us for faking science, for manipulating science, for manipulating methodologies, for results, or anything in our studies. And that's a big weakness for them, because they could easily, if they want to prove that we have been corrupt in any way, let's have a look at our studies and try to challenge the findings, try to challenge the way we perform the studies, try to challenge the results that we are presenting. Well, we have challenged a lot of results from others, but no one has challenged our own results yet. I've published 90 studies. I've never heard anyone suggesting that we somehow manipulated or anything our results. We've never had any study being retracted or being raising some questions concerning the accuracy of our findings and the accuracy of our results, because that's important. That a study by Stanton Glantz was retracted. It was retracted because the study was reporting an association between smoking and heart attacks, while in reality, the vast majority of people who had the heart attacks developed the disease before initiating e-cigarette use. That was clearly data manipulation by hiding to present data on the timing of e-cigarette use initiation and the time of the heart attack, data that were available in the study that they were doing. So that was data manipulation. That was not, an irrelevant mistake. That was data manipulation. In reality, it was hiding, some crucial information that was available in the study. Because when you have this information, by definition, you have to exclude those people who developed the heart attack before e-cigarette use initiation. But they didn't do that. So it was a form of data manipulation by failing to use information that was available to the researchers, which would lead in a further cleanup of the group that was supposed to be e-cigarette users who developed a heart attack. Those were heart attack patients who subsequently started using electronic cigarettes, So you can't discuss and present an association between smoking and heart attack, between e-cigarette use and heart attacks, when you had people who developed the heart attack before using e-cigarettes. It's nonsense, and that was the reason for retraction. I don't understand why they're complaining. It was obviously a case of a study that needed to be retracted. There was no question that the study should have been retracted. It's as simple as that. It is a problem.
About that study. The point is that study is still being cited, so they still talk about it.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, I saw it recently.
Did you see that?
It was cited. Unbelievable. They cited a study which they mentioned that it's retracted. I've never heard of that anywhere. I've never heard of that anywhere, seriously. And they are accusing, we were 17 scientists, and we were accused of being something like recruits from the e-cigarette industry. I mean, which is completely ridiculous. It was not our decision to retract it. It was the journal editor's decision. And we set specific questions that were not addressed by them. Because if they had been addressed, the study would have concluded that there is no association between e-cigarette use and heart attacks. That's the truth.
It's your field. You're specialized on that. You know that, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are your future studies heading to? Where are you? Which direction are your next research heading?
Well, we keep on working on all fields. We're working on chemistry. We're working on population studies. We're working on all fields, and we're trying to develop more studies evaluating the effects of e-cigarettes. Still, there's a lot of research that needs to be done. It's also important to compare these products with heated tobacco products now that they are available. And of course, all of them, again, compared with tobacco cigarettes. I think this is really crucial. And that's what we're doing.
So thank you very much, Dr. Vassilinos, Konstantinos. Thank you so much. Efcharisto. So
thank you, Frank. Grazie.
And hope to actually talk to you in the future, have next interview, and talk about your next researches. Urge people now to your site and inform themselves, because the main thing to do is actually be informed. So advocacy, absolutely. So thank you for all your work that you actually do on tobacco.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.